Adam in Rochester, New York. You think I am out of my mind. Why?
Hey, Tom. Long-time conservative listener, and I appreciate listening to other points of view than my own. So I do thank you for that, and I agree with maybe 5% of what you say.
Okay.
So with that, you said that Bernie Sanders is dead center of the U.S.
Right.
I mean, I saw something on Facebook saying, here's 11 things that Bernie wants to do. Lower college education costs, lower health care for everybody, access to health care, things like that.
Right.
But who's not going to go? To say that he's center right and that over half the country is going to go for those policies, obviously, who doesn't want people out of poverty? Who doesn't want sick people to see a doctor?
Paul Ryan.
Obviously.
Paul Ryan.
But the thing is,
John Boehner. Rand Paul.
Well,
I'm telling you, when Ron Paul was asked directly in that, by the CNN, was it Wolf Blitzer during the debates. Now this was Ron Paul, dad, back in the last Republican debates. Should this 30-year-old young man who has no insurance and is laying on the street bleeding out in front of the hospital, should he just be allowed to die? That was essentially the answer. Yeah. The Republicans will not acknowledge what every developed country, of the 34 developed countries in the world, the OECD countries, 33 of them have in law or in their constitutions that health care is a right and not a privilege. Just like we say free speech and the right to own a gun is a right and not a privilege. They say health care is a right and not a privilege. And what Bernie Sanders is saying with regard to health care, for example, is if we went to a single-payer system, which would be basically everybody can sign up for Medicare, you would cut the spending in half in this country. Canada spends half of what we spend. Most other countries spend less than half of what we spend, and they get better results. Their people live longer. They're healthier. They have lower rates of preventable disease. They have higher rates of cure for most diseases. The single exception is breast cancer, and I think that's because we've done such a good job of teaching women how to do self-exams, because that's where most breast cancers are found now. But outside of that, what he's saying, this used to be a conservative position. Let's cut in half our health care spending.
Oh, that'd be great. Cut spending would be fantastic.
Well, then all you do is go with Medicare. Medicare operates at a 2% overhead. The health insurance, the for-profit health insurance companies run on overheads running anywhere from 20 to 40%. Well, now it's capped by Obamacare at 25 and 30%. But you've got like Stephen J. Hemsley, the guy who runs United Healthcare, which is the largest provider of Medicare Part D programs as well, has taken over $1 billion out of the company. Where did that money come from? Every penny of it came from saying to somebody like you, Adam, no, our insurance company is not going to pay for your operation.
Right. I'm not going to get into the specifics because, frankly, I'm not that. I'm a young guy.
Well, then please identify for me an area where Bernie Sanders is not representing America.
Well, as my point was, who's not going to go for paying people more? Who's not?
Republicans. Republicans.
No, let me finish. Everyone's for that. It's
no.
The difference is, Tom,
the minimum wage has not been raised in years because Republicans filibuster every attempt to do so.
Tom, the difference is how do we get people there? That's the problem. If you were to outline Bernie Sanders, what he would want to do, he is a socialist, by the way.
He's a democratic socialist. Have you ever visited Northern Europe, Adam?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, he is. Let me encourage you to do it. First of all, you'd love it. But he is, as a democratic socialist, he's saying that what works in Germany and France and Denmark and Norway and Sweden can work here in the United States, and I agree with him.
Now I would just have to politely, respectfully agree to disagree with that because we have a completely different mindset in this country.
No, we don't. We don't. The majority of Americans, I'm looking at the polling. I've got it right in front of me right now. 71% of Americans think that we should have a single-payer healthcare system. 71% of Americans. Only if you look at who doesn't want that, it's 13% of Americans don't want that. And I can't read the part who are undecided because it's in yellow, and I can't read the reversed out type. But it's very small. But tell me a Bernie policy that you disagree with.
Well, see, the thing is, I don't necessarily disagree with what he says. I'll give you that.
Then why not vote for him?
Hell no, because the way he's going to want to do it, it's going to be bigger government, more spending, more taxing. It's going to be the same stuff that we.
And what's wrong with that, Adam? Our government is about 20% of GDP. The Canadian government represents about 40% of GDP. In the Scandinavian countries, the government represents a little over 40% of GDP, and the same in France and Germany. And they have a much better standard of life than we do. What's wrong with taking things like health insurance and prisons away from corporations and schools, away from corporations that just want to do it to make a buck, and to hell with the American people, and putting it in the hands of a government that is answerable to the voters, and getting rid of the billionaire influence on the voters by having public financing of elections? What's wrong with that? Isn't that the American way?
That's one of the 5%. When I said earlier, I agree with you about 5% of the time. Getting money the hell out of politics would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Not in my lifetime, not in your lifetime.
Well, I think it could. I mean, Move to Amend has gotten over 600 communities now to pass resolutions saying, and 18 states, if my recollection is correct, saying that we need to have a constitutional amendment to reverse the Supreme Court and say money is not speech, corporations aren't people. And let's go back to respecting human beings and voters. And rather than what John Roberts is writing, that politicians should be responding to the people who fund their campaigns rather than to the voters in their districts.
Right. Well, I agree with that.
Okay. All right. Adam, we've found a point of agreement. It's always good talking with you. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for calling in.